Okay, in the last video, we began to learn about iterators in Java, and we learned that both the list and set interfaces in Java come with this iterator method, and the iterator method returns an instance of a class that implements the iterator interface. And this is the iterator interface here, where every iterator is something you can ask for the next element, does it have a next element, and remove the element we just got back from next. We haven't talked about remove yet. We're going to focus mainly on next and has next because those are the two methods you'll use the most. And we want to picture an iterator, or I want you to picture an iterator like this because I find this to be a helpful image. Almost like if this is my list structure and it has my elements hello, what's up, bye, because those are the three things I added to my array list. And then I ask that list for an iterator, like I did on this line here. It's almost like this monster emerges, still attached to the list structure, pops out, and now we start asking it, get me the next element, and it tells you the value of the next element and says, hello, and it hops along to the next element, so that the next time you call next, it will say, what's up, and hop along to the next element. And if we say, do you have a next element, it will say true at this point because it hasn't said bye yet. And if we ask it, what's your next element now, it will say bye, and it'll be sitting precariously here. So if we ask it, do you have a next element now, it says false. And if we ask it for the next element, if we call the next method, it jumps to its death and crashes. So we don't ever want to call next when has next is false. So what I want to do now is use this idea to write a little method. And I wish I could keep all this on the screen, but I'm sure it's not going to succeed. So my method is going to print out all the elements of a list. So let's say it's going to be public, so I can call it, static, so I don't need a particular object to call it on, void because it doesn't return anything, it just prints. It's called print, and it takes in a list. And we'll just say list of strings. So my method will only print strings. Okay. So what does the code look like to actually print the contents of that list? Well, we could go about this the old-fashioned way and write something like this. List. Oops. But this plan has two drawbacks. There's a reason we're learning iterators, right? This plan has two drawbacks. One is, if this thing here, if my list, like let's say the list I decide to print isn't an array list, what if it's a linked list? And when I say linked list, I mean linked list, the class that comes built into Java, that inside has a bunch of nodes. If you're familiar with linked list nodes, I don't know if you are, depending on what order you've watched videos or what order your teacher has taught you. But the linked list class happens to support all the same methods as the array list class, except that the get method that gets an element by index is very, very slow. It runs in linear time, and therefore I wouldn't want to print in this fashion, because if each call to print takes linear time and I run it a linear number of times, it will take me quadratic time to print out the elements of a list. So that's one reason I might not like this approach. Another is, if I decided I wanted to print a set, well, this code doesn't work at all, because sets don't have this method that says get me an element by index, because sets are not indexed. So for those reasons, we might want to know how to loop over a list or a set with an iterator. And so let's start again with an iterator. How do I get an iterator? I ask my data structure, my list or set, for an iterator. So I call its iterator method, right? That's this method up here that both list and set have. And so I ask for an iterator, and one of these monster things emerges, and that will be an iterator of string, since I have a list of string, and I'm calling it because I like calling my iterators it. It is a good name for an iterator. It kind of looks like an it, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Alright, now I want to loop over and print out the elements. What kind of loop am I going to use? Well, I could do this more than one way, but my favorite way would be use a while loop. And a while loop's good here because I don't know how many times I want my loop to run, but I will know when the loop is done. I'll know when I've come to the end of my iterator. So, while something, and what am I going to do inside of the method? Well, I'm going to print. Oops, print. And the thing I'm going to print is it.next, right? Every time I call it.next, it.next does two things. It returns the current value, so here it returns hello the first time I call it, but it also advances to the next value so that the next time I call it.next, I will get the next value, and this was short for what's up, since I ran out of room in my picture. Alright, so if we write true here, right, this is an infinite loop, or it looks like it will be an infinite loop. This code will print the first, actually I don't even need these braces, do I? This code will print the first value, which in my list before was hello, print the second value, which was what's up, and print the third value, which is bye, and then it will try to print the fourth value, and it will crash. My code will crash. So I don't want my code to crash, so instead of while true, we'll write, and I'm sure you saw this coming, while it has next. While you have a next element, then it's safe to call the next method that gives you back that next element and advances, and then you can, having advanced, you want to check again, do you have a next element, and if you do, print the next one, and so on. So this is exactly how to print the elements of a list, or we could actually change this to be a set without, and my code would still compile because a set also has an iterator method, although if it's a set, then list is a terrible name for it. This is exactly how to loop using an iterator. This is the right way to do it. But I think it's educational to see some wrong ways of looping with an iterator. So I want to show you some ways not to loop with an iterator, and I think that will be instructional, because although this makes sense to everyone at first, there are so many ways to miswrite it that might also make sense to you. So suppose instead I had written this. We ask for an iterator at the beginning, but then we make a note of the first value in the iterator, and already something should be bothering you, because if there's no first value, this is going to crash, right? But suppose we don't know that, and we write something like this. While x is not null, we will print out the value of x, print out the value of x, and we'll advance. X will advance to the next element. So this is one of the things I've seen people do who are still uncomfortable with iterators, and the reason it doesn't work is because x is not going to become null. It.next does not return null at the end. It crashes, right? So don't get in the habit of thinking it returns null. It might have made sense if it returned null, but it doesn't. It crashes, so we can't treat it like it does return a null value. Okay, so that's one thing we should be careful of. By the way, I've seen other variations of this line that are even worse. I've seen it equals it.next. It equals it.next. And if you think about it, that doesn't make any sense, although it sounds like someone is trying to advance. It.next is an element of your list. It is an iterator. You can't store an element, such as a string in this case, in an iterator of string. That doesn't make any sense, so that definitely will not compile for you. Alright, let's try another way. Suppose that I don't know how to use iterators right, and I write the following instead. So again, we'll make my lovely little iterator. List. That actually highlights a good point too. Since I started writing this, I should point out what's wrong about it. This is one of the ways I've seen students attempt to make iterators. And at first it sounds good. You want an iterator, so you make a new one, and you want the new one to loop over the list, so you pass that in as an argument. Except for what? Except that iterator is an interface, not a class. So you can't construct it. If you want an iterator, the only way to get an iterator is to make an instance of a class that implements the iterator interface. And if you want an iterator that loops over a list, like this one here, you have to ask that list to produce an iterator. So you ask the list, give me one of those list iterator monster things. Right? So let's see maybe another not so hot way of using iterators. What if we, this time we're going to start correctly, ask my list to produce an iterator, and out pops one of those monster things. Oops, where'd my cursor go? Okay, I got too excited about monsters. Alright, now what? While it has next, so I've learned my lesson, I'm using it has next, and in my loop, you know what I'd like to do? I want to print only if the value is hello. That sounds good, right? If the next value is hello, print it. Why doesn't that work? Why doesn't that do what I want? Suppose again that my list, let's go way up here. My list is this thing, hello, what's up, bye. Hello, what's up, bye. Hello, what's up, bye. Okay, we remember that? And I run that on this code. What's going to happen? In fact, let's draw out the boxes so we can see it in action. So, hello, what's up, bye. Think those fit? Hello. These are strings. What's up and bye. Those are the three elements of my list. We ask for an iterator, and let's see. Out pops this monster like that. Maybe with an eye. Like that. Maybe with an eyebrow too. There we go. And we enter the loop, right? Because we do have a next value. We have all of the values left to go. And we ask it.next, is that equal to hello? Well, it.next means that my monster is going to advance, right? So it's no longer going to be on hello. It's going to say hello, and it's going to advance, right? So it says, oops, it says hello, but it advances to the next element, right? Does the thing we got back equal hello? Yes, it does. So we're going to print that, right? Except we're going to print it.next. What does it.next do? It does the same thing all over again. Except here, now that my monster's advanced to this position, it's going to say, what's up? And advance again. So what just happened? We printed what's up. So that's surprising. This code clearly looks like it says it's going to print out all the hellos, but actually the very first thing it does is get hello and then print what's up. So remember, every time we call next, we're going to advance to the next element. And let's just finish out this example. If we keep going, we do have a next. It's bye. So we'll get that. And that thing is not hello, right? It's going to say bye and advance to this point, and that's not hello. So it will not print anything and get to this line again and say, does it have next? Nope, false. And we leave the loop, but all that got printed was what's up. So something else we want to be careful of, and basically the rule of thumb is don't call the next method more than once per loop. I'm sure there are exceptions to that rule where you might want to call it.next more than once, but it's these two calls to it.next that are causing us grief. Alright, we'll see a couple more silly ways of using iterators in the next video.